So welcome to the 8th episode of Setting the Standard podcast. This is a show all about jewelry making, diamond setting, engraving, everything that goes along with making fine jewelry. Today we've got a really great interview with no other than Jeff Parke, and I'm really excited to get into it. Today's episode is brought to you by Setting the Standard online diamond setting school. So if you're interested in leveling up your diamond setting, then definitely head over to the website. The link's down below, and you can learn a little bit more about the online course that I offer. So in today's episode with Jeff, we dive into a lot of great stuff, like how he got into the industry, some tips he has for monetizing engraving, and a lot of his thoughts on engraving as a whole. And I found it really fascinating. He's a really interesting person, and hopefully a lot of you guys have already seen some of his work. It's absolutely incredible. Some of the things that he's doing with multicolor gold inlay on Rolex watches is just mind-blowing. So without further ado, let's get into it. All right.
Hello.
Welcome to the show, Jeff. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thank you, Bernard. Thanks for having me.
Appreciate it, man. No, I really appreciate you coming on here, taking the time. So, let's get right into this. Why don't you tell us?
I'm excited.
How did you get into jewelry, and how did you sort of end up in engraving?
Sometimes when I have a minute to myself, I contemplate, because I'm like, how did I get from where I was, like, as a younger kid and going through school and not knowing where I fit in life, to being where I am now? It's kind of like, how does that happen? So a short answer is basically my dad, he's a wheeler dealer, and he basically is the ultimate entrepreneur and got into selling anything and everything. He sold trampolines, toilets, pool tables. So in the 80s, he wanted to upgrade my mom's stone, basically her diamond from her engagement ring. So he went out looking basically to find a deal on a stone. And basically he ended up getting 6 or 7 of his friends together and going in and buying a lot of stones wholesale from this company called West African Mines. I don't even know how he found these people or whatnot, but together with several of his friends, they got in and bought some stones wholesale, and then from there he started kind of selling diamonds on the side, and then he got into engagement rings, and then through that he got 2 of my brothers into the business, and they both opened up jewelry stores, one in southern Utah and one up in Salt Lake. I was going to college at the time. This was about 20 years ago. And my brother, knowing that, I'm good with my hands, I'm pretty artistic, he just asked if I wanted to come in and try bench work, which I did, and I just immediately fell in love with. I just took a liking to it right off the bat. It was just kind of up my alley. Through that, I started taking classes at the New Approach School for Jewelers with Blaine Lewis.
No kidding.
He was out in Virginia Beach at the time. And so I started taking his classes, which were, stone setting, advanced stone setting, wax carving with Kate Wolf, fabrication, took all of his classes. The last class I went out there and took in 2008 was ornamental hand engraving with Jason Marchiafava. And that was
that hand push?
16 years ago. Hand push, yeah. It was all just take basically an onglet graver and a flat graver and just... Yeah, you learn how to do he calls them cat claws and S cuts and knit cuts, all of these little cuts that you make in traditional hand engraving to create basically your designs. So when I was out there during that class, something in my brain just clicked, it just shifted, just went from here, he was working on some stuff out there. He had a double barrel shotgun that he was engraving at the time. It was covered in, gold overlay. all of these, basically, it's just stuff I hadn't seen before, and I didn't even know it existed. And so I was just blown away. And I went home and immediately just started, onglet, flat graver, just push engraving everything. I got to the point where it's like, you know what, I need pneumatic tools. Everybody's using air tools. I need a microscope. I'm broke. I have no money. I sold the one thing that had value at the time, my Paul Reed Smith Custom 22 guitar. And that allowed
Okay.
me to buy, the GRS graver mock. And then shortly after that, I was able to get a microscope. And then from there, I was like up and running, like obsessed, just I went to work. I made a deal with my boss. I said, I'll do all your jewelry work, but I want you to let me engrave the rest of the time I'm at work. And my boss was cool with that. And then I'd go home after work and engrave. And on the weekends, I would just engrave. I just, and that was 15 years ago, and I just never stopped. It's just, it's still all I do. And I'm still obsessed with it.
That's awesome.
So it's interesting, like what, because you try to like Jeff, how did you get into this? And I'm like, a lot of things happened where the stars just aligned. I was in the right place at the right time. I spent a lot of time one-on-one with Jason. He was instrumental in getting me to where I am now. I'd go out, we became friends after that class, and I'd go out and stay with him. He was in Bethlehem, Pennsylvania. He was making these one-off, just crazy, custom, priceless pieces of jewelry, and I'd sleep on a blow-up mattress in his living room, and he'd go to work, and then when he'd come home, he'd show me stuff, and I'd go out there for like 3 weeks, a month at a time. I did that, several times. So I was fortunate, I don't know, I remember Conor McGregor, when people would ask him how he became, the world champion. Obviously, you know who Conor is, right? MMA fighter, notorious. But it's the same thing. He says, I'm not more talented than anybody. I'm just obsessed. And I think there's a lot of truth to that. It's like people will say you're talented or this and that, but I'd say, no, it's an obsession. It's just that I spend way more time thinking about this and doing it and all of those things than most other people will or do. So anyways, I'm ranting and rumbling,
it's awesome.
but yeah, it's just,
it tracks.
Yeah, well, I made a post today. I just finished a big project, another Rolex watch, and I just, I don't say much about my work ever. I don't talk too much about it. I just let the images do the talking for me. Mm-hmm. But I just basically said, I got into this game because I love it, and I think that you have to have love for what you do. Obviously you see that in your work. Obviously there's a reason why you chose not to do what you were doing before and you got into gem setting, and obviously you have a passion for it, and it shows.
Absolutely.
And so I think I'm lucky. I'm very fortunate. I feel like it was actually my destiny to do what I do. And I know that sounds kind of ridiculous and absurd, but I mean, I'm a kid from this is a small town in southern Utah, and it's like, how do you get from being there to what I'm doing now? Like we talked about, Roman earlier in his school, and like going to St. Petersburg and teaching over in Russia. It's like, no, that's like the cultural center of the arts, and they want me to come over there and teach them. Like that doesn't make any sense. So it's interesting. A lot. So
it's amazing. Yeah. That's awesome. That's such a cool story. It's funny, like even just so far in the podcast episodes, but also outside of that and talking to people, how often I hear that same phrase of how instrumental Jason Marchiafava has been in so many people's progression. It's pretty wild. It's a real testament to that guy.
And I think the old school mentality in the jewelry industry and with engraving is there's so many gatekeepers out there, mm-hmm. where, even though, yeah, they're teaching, they're showing you stuff, Jason was different. He was like, he's been teaching forever. He's been in the game forever. He started, I think, apprenticing with his dad when he was like 14 or something like that. Yeah. He was the youngest master engraver. But he's never been he's been so open with information, and I've never met anybody like that. And there's lots of people that teach, and it's not like teaching is new, but at the same time, I felt like he got a kick out of seeing me progress. And I don't think that's always the case, right? And he's been like that with, yeah, like you say, so many. And if it wasn't for him, I just don't think I'd be doing what I'm doing. I just, he was instrumental. And I always try to tell him and let him know, like, hey, dude, I'm super grateful. And hopefully he listens. I don't know if he listens, it's, we've always been good friends and stayed in touch. And still to this day, like anytime I can be around him, it's almost like osmosis. Like just being in his presence, I can like pull some of that information or out of him, whether it's through talking or him showing anything. Still to this day, anytime I can just even be around him, is like, he's been a huge part of my path.
Very cool. Very cool.
So it's always good to have a mentor, somebody to show you the
Absolutely.
ropes.
So actually leads into my next question. So we've covered Jason. Who would you say your other biggest influences have been in engraving?
Winston Churchill, who just passed away, I think yesterday or the day before.
Rest in peace, yeah.
I always admired his, as far as, okay, we have the American engravers, and there's three. Well, Jason, set him aside, obviously, but Winston Churchill, Sam Alfano, and Steve Lindsay would be my those are my three kind of the goats of American engraving. And then once you branch out of that, it's like, oh my gosh, there's some Russian dudes that I don't even know what they're doing. Their work is like alien level. It blows me away. Elaine Lovenberg, who's one of my heroes. I was lucky enough to spend 2 weeks with him at Grandmasters back in 2012.
It was very cool.
Yeah. So he came over here. So many, the Fracassis, Fermo and Francesca in Italy. There's too many to name, but those are a few. And then art in general. Movies, music, literature. It's like,
So you had said that your brothers saw that you were a bit of an arty person. Like, what was your arts background before you went into jewelry?
Being crazy. I wanted to be a musician. I was a guitar player. Music was my big thing. I remember, I took piano lessons for years and I hated that. And then my mom made me play the trombone in school. But ever since I was like little, like 12, I wanted to play the electric guitar. I just had a lot of older brothers. Rock and roll was like, always, banging in our house. So I was drawn to the electric guitar. I remember when I was like 13 years old, unfortunately, my poor dad, I stole some silver from my dad and went to the pawn shop and bought an electric guitar. And I've always just been attracted to especially electric guitars. So if you come to my studio, you'll see guitars hanging up on the wall. There's guitars you can play. So it was music. Music's always been my thing. And I tell people I'm actually a failed musician. That's my profession. It's like I got sidetracked. Yeah, I just got sidetracked. And I don't think I ever had a chance. That's a saturated industry. It's like, thank God that I got sidetracked. But music's always been my first love. But art, yes, I excelled in art. I drew over everything growing up. All of my classes that I took in college were art classes. So there was never like it was music. That was the art that I loved the most. But I was attracted to all the arts. I excelled in pretty much everything. People ask me, like, did you draw growing up? Yes, I did. I don't think I had any direction with it. It was all chaotic. If you go back and look at some of my art from back when I was in college and high school, it's like, dude, you're a crazy person. What the hell is this? It's like, it's actually disturbing on a lot of levels. My mom always told me, like, you used to draw like just like skeletons and stuff during church. like you just draw like morbid kind of like art, like during church. And I always thought that was kind of funny. But yeah, I guess I've always had more of an instinct towards art than obviously other things. Like if I had to work a normal job, I'd be screwed because, I don't do numbers. I don't do
Yeah.
computers. I live in kind of this, it's an aesthetic world. I see things in aesthetics, and with that, I think that, melody, I constantly listen to music. It's like first thing in the morning, I turn music on, but you know what I'm saying? I
Yeah.
kind of
Yeah.
live in a reality that's my own that has to do with art and music. And if it doesn't have anything to do with that, I don't want anything to do with it.
You can really see it come through in the design of your new studio there too, like how you set it up. It's really nice.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, it's like a man cave. It's like I get to do what I want, which is nice. And people can say this or that, or everybody has something to say about it. But it's like, well, this is me. And the great thing about engraving, or it's given me an identity, and it's basically validated myself, or being confident with what I like. Because when I first started engraving, I would rarely show it to people. I was like not embarrassed by it, but it's like I don't know if people are going to appreciate it as much as me. And I found that, especially when social media came around, it's like that's not true. People love it just as much as you do, and it's validated kind of my crazy brain, or my personality type, which I think is it's not Reggie. I'm not a Reggie. I'm not a regular person. I'm a little bit crazy.
I get it. I hear you, man.
And but it's allowed me to be confident with what I like and what I want to do. So, and I'm fortunate now where I get to do what I want to do. With engraving, it wasn't always that way, but now it's like I get to tell my clients like I'm doing what I want to do. And
The dream
and they're
for
okay with that.
most artists.
Right, it is. And it's taken me a long time to get there. It's not like it just happened. But, I think that if I excel in one arena, it's easy for me to be creative. I think some people struggle with that. I know with engraving especially, people are always asking me, what should I do here? What should I do next? And I always give the same advice. I just say, finish it. Just get it done. Just don't worry about it. Why are you stressed out? It's like I tell my students, like, you're never going to like make your magnum opus. Like it's never going to happen, because even in my own experience, it's like you think you're going to make it, and then you get finished with it, and then you're always disappointed with it to a degree. At least I am. And it's on to the next. Like I'm already on to the next project. So my advice to people when they're having creative problems is like, it doesn't matter if you go left or right. It's like it's the right decision, or meaning to stall, that's the only wrong decision. It doesn't matter if you go left or right. You just have to go. Just go, and then through that, you learn, you get
pivot.
better, you progress.
A very common thought process from kind of people considered high performers or successful. You hear that thought process a lot, that like the only wrong decision you can make is no decision.
Just
and
go.
It's just the quicker you can make a decision, go with it, and then learn from it, with whether it was right or wrong. So
now, your first impression is usually right. You just don't let your brain have enough time to like second guess it. I just feel like the biggest problem with people that get into, especially when I talk about what we do, I'm mostly talking about engraving, right? It's just getting stuck with not knowing where to go. That's the biggest problem. And for me, the great thing is I don't really have that problem. I just go. It's like, and I just trust that through going, I'll find a path, And
for sure.
I don't know what that path looks like, to be honest with you. I just know I need to go. Things need to get done. You have to finish projects. Engraving is extremely time consuming. Just know that, you're not going to make your magnum opus. It's like, just get that out of your head. It's like, by producing, you'll unavoidably make it on accident. You know what I'm saying? But it's just through doing, getting stuff done. Always do your best, but just go.
So tell me, like, what does your creative process look like? Like, if you've got a new watch, for instance, are you like, how do you come up with your ideas? How do you get them onto paper or iPad? And then how do you get them onto your watches? How does that all work for you?
For the most part, with watches, I have still basically people that are commissioning me to do a piece, and they will have a theme that they're interested in. Not always. A lot of times I have the luxury of just doing whatever I want, but sometimes, like this last piece, it's for a client, and they've purchased lots of stuff from me. They're a great client. I did a Super Mario Brothers themed watch about 6 years ago. I can't remember, 6 or 7 years ago. And I think they had seen that, and so they wanted a Super Mario Brothers theme. Perfect. Like, are you kidding me? It's my favorite video game of all time. I just went and saw the movie with my little boy. It's like, this is the kind of stuff that like I thrive on. So this is a perfect idea for a watch as far as I'm concerned. So basically, I don't put too much thought into it. I mean, obviously it's in my brain, so the cogs and the wheels are turning. For my client, I told him a long time ago, like, I don't do renderings, I don't do drawings, I don't do any. I feel like I work a little bit differently, where I am of a philosophy of just, I don't need to see or have all the answers or the complete vision before I actually start. To be honest, I wing it. Like, I don't even, I have a general idea. I'm like, okay, on the dial, I want Mario and Luigi. And there's obviously a picture of them that I really like where they're standing back to back. Outside of that, I don't know. I just will go and I'll print out that picture and I'll transfer that and shrink it down to the size that I need on the dial. And then I place that on the dial, and then I start just working. Meaning I start creating, I start putting border lines on it, I section it off into corners. I basically come to the idea of like, oh, I have my own green gold alloy, obviously for Luigi that I'll use, and then my own orange gold alloy that I have for Mario. But outside of that, I don't know what's going to happen. I just trust that I've, over time developed all of these skills that I have in my tool belt. I have all of these tools that I can pull from, that I'm confident in, that I know have cool effects, basically. And so I didn't know I was going to do English scroll on the pants until I was working on it, and I just decided that's what I was going to do. So I don't have a very, my vision is limited. It's almost like it's, obscure, or it's, the resolution is bad. It's vague. But through working, my brain comes up with all of the good ideas that I have through doing. So it's like, like all of a sudden, like you're invested and you're working on something, just cutting out the outlines, and all of a sudden that's where my ideas come from. It's like, oh, I could do this. But it stems back from me having a tool belt with, over 15 years, I've developed all of these skills that I can pull from. So I'm confident going in that I can wing it, and I can also come up with a great result. So for example, if I tried to go to use Procreate, and I tried to design on Procreate, I almost know for a fact that I would get stuck. And
that's what I was just about to say, because there's too many options at that point.
It's too much. It's like, and the problem that I see with people that use Procreate is they can spend so much time on there, like just, revision after revision, or deleting things, or engraving. You can't do that. Once you're committed to something, you're doing it. You know what I'm saying? And it's almost through the commitment of the process of engraving that makes it like you do or do not. It's like Yoda. It's like there is no try. And I feel like Procreate is like try, and you can try forever. And it's like, I don't have the luxury of wasting all that time designing in Procreate, I have to get it done. So I have to start it right now, and I have to work on it until it's done. And I'm just having faith that it's going to come out okay, you know? And so I may be a little different in that regard. I just basically wing it. But it's not winging it because
like the
I
idea of it,
trust
though.
in my tool belt.
Yeah, it's nice because you're breaking it down in a sense that you have, like it's, when you have that Procreate, there's so many things, like as you say, you could pick anything here and see how it looks with this and see how it looks with this. But in reality, once you have that central element, that Mario and Luigi, I think a lot of those decisions for you probably become a lot easier as well on the fly because you're like, I know exactly what that area looks like, exactly what I can apply to it, that kind of thing.
Yeah. And this stems back from when I learned how to engrave, and Jason taught me to, especially all the design elements, all of the ornamental work, the scroll, you drew all of that on by hand on the piece. I think a problem people can have too when they design on Procreate is when you shrink it down to the size of your engraving, it doesn't fit or it doesn't work the way that you thought because you're designing a blown up, basically design, and it doesn't translate. So when you design right on the piece, you had the luxury of knowing how it's going to look. You take a pencil and some wax, you draw it. That's, you cut that out, and that's how it's going to look. And I'm not saying Procreate is bad. I'm not saying designing incomplete. Everybody's different. I understand why people do that, and I think it's good. But for me, I just know that, especially now, it's like I have to make money. I hate to say it, but I'm kind of driven by greed to a degree. It's like, I want to do my best work, but I need to do it as fast as I possibly can to make the most money. And for me, Procreate nobody's paying me to use it. You know what I'm saying? Like I get paid when the watch is done. I don't get paid but I have that luxury. And I'm not saying Procreate is bad. I think it's a great tool. Any tool that you can utilize and works for you is beneficial. I'm just a little bit different.
I think that's also, though, sort of an interesting mentality because yourself, I'm just assuming here, you're obviously at a point where you're probably charging more than somebody who's just getting started and who might be inclined to use Procreate because that seems like the direction a lot of new people are in. And it's interesting that you, in that higher paid position, seem almost more focused on that sort of, that financial aspect of spending the time on there than maybe somebody getting into it.
I tell people now, when I first got into engraving, I admired a lot of people. And I admired them for the work that they did. And now the people that I admire in engraving are the people that create that great work, but also make a good living at it. So if you're not making any money at engraving, I actually don't really have the respect for you. I'm 46, and so I'm married now. I have 2 kids that I have to provide for. You're in the same boat. So it's one of those things like engraving is cool and it's fun and it's amazing, but at the same time, if you can't make any money with it, then I don't know. I feel like there's something like that's not cool. It's like I understand doing it for the love of the art for sure, but at some point, you have to monetize it, and that's another aspect of you making it
completely.
Great.
Completely.
So, a lot of guys that I admired back in the day that I don't admire if they're broke now, if they can't you know what I'm saying? If they're not the breadwinner of their family, it's like, come on.
Yeah.
If I can make money at it, anybody can, because I'm not a business person.
So this is actually something I was going to specifically ask about because I feel like hearing in the forums and the groups and stuff, I hear this more from engravers than goldsmiths or setters, for instance. Just being the complaint is the difficulty of new engravers in monetizing and paying bills and that sort of thing. Like, why do you think that is, and what do you think somebody in that position could do to change that?
One thing I have, if you take a class from me, I try to push three things. I basically have three rules. One is learn ornamental art. You need to know how to decorate something. Two is produce. And three is learn how to sell. So I think one thing that especially artists have a problem with, and I had the same problem, I still have it, is we're insecure about what we're trying to sell. And that's a big problem. And then people also need to like realize that you have to like produce. You have to make stuff to sell. So you could do number one really well, being an ornamental artist, being an engraver, being really good at it. But if you can't produce and you can't sell, then, you know, that's a problem. So that's why I push, you know, producing and selling. And I don't teach you how to sell because I don't know how to sell. I sell my own stuff, but I don't know how to give advice to somebody else to sell your stuff. It's like, maybe you should go take a class, or, you know, it's difficult, especially for engravers, because they tend to be more artistically minded, which they're not salespeople.
No.
If you're a salesperson, you usually don't get into making art. You know, it's like introverts and extroverts. It's like if you're extroverted, you go out and sell stuff and you make a whole bunch of money. If you're introverted, you usually get into art and you don't sell stuff and you're poor. So it's tricky. Everybody wants to know how to make money. I don't know. All I know is every way I look now, and you're probably in the same position. If I look north, south, east, west, I'm like, oh my gosh, I could monetize that. Oh my gosh, I could monetize that. You know, it's a very niche art form, meaning you don't have any competition. Like, if someone wants one of my watches, they can't go somewhere else. No, you know, what I do is a little bit different. I mean, there's several people that engrave watches, but you know what I'm saying? Nobody else does it.
For sure.
And it's true with engraving in general, is it's niche. You're getting in at the bottom level. So nobody has, you know, like I get a lot of students that are transitioning from the tattoo industry because that industry is highly saturated. There's a tattoo clinic on every corner. There's a lot of tattoo artists. And so you have a lot of competition. With engraving, it's like you have zero competition. If you get good, that means you should have every opportunity in the world to sell your work. And everybody likes it. It's not that people look at engraving and say, that's stupid. It's like, you know, everybody wants it. You show them stuff.
Course.
I think, you know, you just have to have a little initiative and you have to have some hustle. Like hustle.
Definitely.
Like you have hustle. You've been in this game for like what, 6, 7, that's nothing. You know, I've been in the game almost 3 times as long as that. And I see where you're at. It's like you have a lot of traction. You know, you have a large Instagram account. You have people talking about you and listening to you. And it's like probably because you have a little bit more hustle than someone else. You see the opportunities around you, where I think engravers they don't open their eyes to the opportunities. It's like they're just artists, which is great, but you have to like get out of your bubble of being introverted and being insecure and just, you know, grow a set and put yourself out in the world and take what you feel is yours, right? And it took me a long time to feel that way about my own stuff, but I'm there now. So I understand where people are coming from. It's hard. You may not make any money for a lot of years, but if you do it for the love of it and you put in all of your effort, it will pay you back. You know, I think to a degree, I think the 10-year rule applies, where you need to put in like 10 years before you really start to have, you know, the universe basically reward you. So
yeah, I could see that.
Hopefully that didn't sound like a rant again.
No, it's all good, man. It's all good.
It's the number. everybody wants to know how to make money, and unfortunately, I don't know. I live in America, right? Like this is the greatest country on earth to still make money. You know what I'm saying? It's easier here than anywhere else. And all my
Yeah.
students usually, with exception, come from the US. And so it's like, you have no excuse. Just, you have to learn how to hustle, sell,
Yeah.
if you don't know how to sell, you have to learn.
If you want to succeed, yeah, for sure.
Or you can be the poor artist, and that's great too. I don't
Yeah.
want to be that poor artist.
No,
So,
me neither. Me neither.
yeah, nobody does.
All right, man. Let's segue here a little bit. Tell me about the tools that you're using at the
All right.
moment. Like, what sort of microscope? What engravers are you using? Sharpening? Who are you using for sharpening?
Yeah, so I got a hodgepodge of tools that I've collected over the years.
Fair.
My first engraving machine was a Graver Mock. So
Okay.
GRS is what I started with. I eventually bought Steve Lindsay's Airgraver, which I fell in love with. So now I basically use Steve's Airgravers. I have a Palm Control and a Classic that I use together, depending on what I'm doing. Palm Control, if it's all just line engraving and background removal. If I need something more like a stippling tool or a punch, that I need foot control, I use his Classic. That's the foot control.
Okay.
I still, the GRS machines are great. I haven't actually used one for years, but they're still wonderful tools. I started using a Meiji microscope to begin with, and I love Meijis, but about 2 years ago, I upgraded to the Zeiss. So the STEMI 508 is what I use now. Sharpening, I'm all over the place. I use GRS's dual angle sharpening jig a lot, but I also use Steve's templates. Are you familiar with Steve's templates?
Yeah.
So here's
yeah,
one
for sure.
sitting right here. So these just, amazing tools. And so I would like to buy not an end set, the pulse graver. I would like to get one of those. I've used them before, and those are great machines. Yura's new machine, hopefully I'll be getting one of those in the near future. I've yet to use one, but I'm excited to try it. For me, I'm not an ambassador of any company. I feel like whoever has this best tool, I'll use it. GRS makes great tools. Steve Lindsay makes great tools. People love the pulse graver. I haven't tried many of Yura's tools, but I'm excited to try them in the future. So let's see, that's the graver, the microscope, the sharpening. Anything else?
The camera. Tell me about your camera, because I feel like I asked you about this a long time ago, and I think you have an Amscope?
Yeah, it's an Amscope, 4K. I don't think anything special.
Okay.
People always ask me, and like, oh, that's a great picture you have on there. And I'm like, oh, okay, I didn't even know that. So it's just and I can send you the information of the same camera, but I don't know if it's anything special.
If it works, it works.
Maybe it is.
What's your favorite geometries for engraving and the work that you're doing?
105. So
105.
When I first started engraving, basically Jason was very fond of the 90, and I'm still fond of a 90, just kind of your traditional, graver geometry, 90 degrees.
It's a hand push.
When I
It's
started
common with
cutting
hand
watch,
pushing, isn't it?
very, very common with hand pushing. And, because Jason had studied a large array of techniques, with the Italians, he studied the dot work, the Bellino work, and you use a 90 for the dot work.
Is that right?
Studied at the Mint, or the Bureau of Engraving, Printmaking. I can't remember the name of the bureau, where they basically do all the banknote engraving here. Where he got to study with Joel McFadden, who's one of the chief engravers over in that bureau, to do like traditional banknote engraving. So they all use a 90. I think it was just kind of, the graver of choice back in the day. When I started engraving watches, watches are notoriously difficult. It's, like a 3 series stainless steel, high chromium steel, hard to cut. They're just nasty. It's just a nasty steel to cut. And so I learned slowly over time, the wider geometry you get, the longer it'll hold a point and not get
Okay.
any chippage. And so I eventually, through time, basically trying different geometries. Steve's 116 was something that I used for a while, and I don't know how I stumbled onto the 105, but it was basically trying to figure out how to cut watch steel without so much breakage. And the
Yeah.
90 just doesn't hold up, and the 105 does. And so I use a steeper face angle. It's about 55 degrees.
Okay.
But that's basically my tool of choice. I all of my V cutting is done with the 105, almost always. Even if it's in jewelry or stainless steel, it doesn't matter. It's my graver of choice for sure.
And you'd use that same 55-degree face angle on gold as well?
Yep. Yep. Yeah, it's just something that,
works.
it works, and I'm used to it. So some people will come in for a class and I'll have a steeper face angle and they're like, I can't see, and it's like, okay, well, we can take it back down to 45 or whatever works, but I just used to it, so it's like, you get,
Yeah, it's all about the angle of the vise, and everything
and
else kind of goes into it.
and the interesting thing I was going to ask you earlier about Alexander's kind of methods as opposed to Roman's is, and I never took a diamond setting class from Roman, but Alexander, has a graver for everything. You have a graver for a left cut. You have a graver for a right cut. We made probably 20 gravers during the 2 weeks that I spent with him. And I pretty much just use like 3 or 4 gravers for everything that I do. And so I like the simple version of just like, this tool works and I can use it in a lot of different ways, and I don't need to have all of these other geometries for different, cuts.
Yeah.
I'm just very fond of having a few paintbrushes.
I'm with you on that one. I since moved back for curve cutting, because Alexander, he's got those gravers with the angled faces for the curves in opposite directions, and I now use what Roman taught me, although it's slightly different. He makes
And
his curve cutting cuts both directions, but I think he uses an onglet shape. I use a V graver but it cuts in both directions, and then I try to keep it pretty simple myself as well. Still have a lot of gravers, but try to keep it simple.
Yeah, well, as we all do. I mean, I got gravers everywhere, but I basically just have like 3 or 4 that are my, gravers where I'm constantly going to them. And
Yeah.
obviously, engraving is a little different than gem setting, but
Yeah, I would expect, I think, by nature that there's going to be a couple more for setting, just because there's a lot more
yeah.
tricky little spots that we're trying to get in bright cut.
And
Interesting.
I don't do a ton of sculpting. When you do a lot of sculpting, you use a lot of different gravers for that. But yeah, no, I think that you use more for gem setting for sure.
I'm gonna keep moving here though. Let's tell me. Hey there, I want to take a moment out of the interview to let you guys know that I do not monetize this podcast in any way. I don't get paid for doing this. I'm just doing this because I'm really passionate about the information and meeting the people and talking with them. So if you have been enjoying this, then I'd ask you to subscribe to the YouTube channel down below so you'll be the first to know when a new episode comes out. And if somebody you think might be interested in this podcast, then I'd just ask you to share it. That's the biggest way that you can support me, and I would really appreciate it. But let's get back into it. Tell me about your inlays and stuff, because I've heard some metals, especially like red gold, is supposed to be notoriously difficult to inlay, and you are doing some insane multicolor, making your own alloy stuff. Like, how did that come about, and what kind of tips can you give us on that?
I got addicted to doing inlay right from the start. When I first started engraving, something about inlay just and using gold just appealed to me, and I started doing it a lot right from the start, and I guess obviously never stopped. The colored started coming around when obviously I don't even remember, but being a jeweler, I'm always like, I've always just melted my own gold, rolled it out on the rolling mill, pulled it into wire. I'm not someone that just bought wire from Stoller or Rio Grande. I always made it myself. So it just seemed natural for me, knowing that, okay, if you want a green color gold, you need to add silver. And so I started experimenting. It's like, oh, adding fine silver to gold gives you a nice royal yellow color all the way down to a very green color. I don't remember when I first started doing it. It's interesting because I remember getting a comment about 4 or 5 years ago. It was Lane Zulke, and he basically said, man, you're doing some amazing stuff with color. And I never thought about it. I'm like, well, thanks, but I just always thought that people were using colored golds all the time, you know. But traditionally, you have basically gold, red gold, and maybe a green gold. And not too many variations of those colors. Well, I just came to know that, well, you know, the more silver you add, you can go from this really kind of royal yellow to green, and there's a spectrum there. So I just started like making all these spectrums. Then I thought, oh man, it'd be cool if you could fade it, you know, like you slowly transition different colored wires down and, you know, start fading colors. And so it's just, you know, I've always been someone that when you have an idea, you need to do it, you know, just, is it going to look good? Is it going to work?
Yeah.
I don't know. Who knows? But I just want to try it. I've always been keen on just trying stuff. All right, so that's green gold. So adding more fine silver to gold will give you, you know, a spectrum of green all the way down to a very, very light green, where about a 50-50 ratio of gold and silver, you start to bleach the gold out completely and it goes back to a white color. Silver just takes over. Red gold is a bitch. It's like, it's the devil. When people ask me about it, it's like, how do, you know, Inlay, I tell them, don't do it. Like, copper and gold don't get along. Anybody who's worked with red gold knows this. You know, it's difficult in every way. It's copper and gold together makes a brittle alloy. Well, copper by itself is nice and soft and malleable, and you know, it's cool and great. Gold the same way. When you put them together, right when you start melting them, they start sparking. They like almost fight each other. You can see it when you like, and then they finally, you know, join together, but they don't like each other. And so you have to be very careful. If you were to buy a red gold from Stoller or from Rio, obvious, it's an alloy that has all kinds of metals in it. You know, it probably has copper and silver and zinc and who knows. And it's going to be a hard alloy. So if you bought wire, red gold wire from a supplier, it's going to be notoriously difficult because it's made for jewelry. It's made to be hard. And copper and gold are already hard. So how do you get like a workable red color? I'm not going to go into like my
no, you don't need
basically recipes, but you don't want to add any other elements. It's just when I create my alloys for Inlay, it's gold and silver together, right? Pure gold, fine silver, or pure gold to make red, pure gold and copper, fine copper. There's no other, you know, ingredients in the recipe. Mm-hmm. But once you add gold to copper, you're going to get a hard alloy. It's
no way around it.
You know, so there's no way around. It's just far more difficult to inlay and to use in general. I was just going to say silver and gold, they love each other. They go together. It's an electrum, right? That's what they used to call it. That was the alloy name. And it's soft and it's malleable and it's beautiful. And they just like, it's a loving bond. Where copper is just, you know, red gold is the devil. That's what I tell people.
The question I was wondering, do you ever run into any issues with finishing when you're doing your gradients of the different colors side by side? Like, is there, like, alloying aside, when you're applying the red gold, does it bring you any issues that you run into, or how does that work? Because I don't think there's too many other people that have really even done gradient inlays.
No.
No,
They
it's
tend to
pretty.
basically, as long as your inlays are clean, you know what I'm saying? Like, you know what you're doing when you're putting them in.
Yeah.
You'll get like a razor's edge when you finish it, basically from one wire to the next. And when they're
Okay.
all said and done, it cuts and looks like one piece. Even though it may
So
be a
good.
gradient, they all finish. The only exception is if I platinum, because platinum is so different than gold and silver and even copper. You know, it's just much more dense, and so it's harder to file and sand. Um, but with the gradient out, I'll always have green and red. Now, if the inlays are clean and done correctly, there's no you can't differentiate after you're filing and sanding and finishing, even cutting into it. If
Yeah.
you're bright cutting or shading, it all just cuts like one piece of gold. It's pretty
Very cool.
it's a lot easier than people think. They always think that there's some trick with it. Um, there's not. I line them up one row of wire next to the, row by row. And once you hammer it down and you file it and sand it, it just looks like one sheet.
So I've wanted to ask this to you guys before, like watch engravers specifically that are doing a lot of inlay. Like, how are you guys getting that surface so flush with the steel without messing up the steel after the inlay is hammered down?
So it's surgery, meaning you have to be meticulous. So I spent 12 years as a bench jeweler filing and sanding. You know what I'm saying? So there's no trick. It's like I use files and sandpaper, and you have to be careful. I guess one of the things that I try to tell my students is that I do everything under the scope. I need to be able to see what I'm doing.
Yep.
And you need to be patient, and you have to turn your hands into like machines. These are, the ultimate tool if you train them. And so there's no secrets. It's really just filing and sanding and being meticulous. You have to be super careful and aware of what you're doing. I work under the scope, and I've trained these hands. And it's surgery. I tell students, it's like, how are you doing that? I go back to my bench and I try it and I can't do it. And I'm like, you have to train your hands, your eyes, your body. There's no secrets. Like, I don't have any secrets.
This is one of the downsides that I feel like I've found with the in-person, like, intensive courses, is I don't think a lot of people grasp that this is sort of just showing you the techniques. You don't come out of a 1 week course knowing how to do what the teacher did. You know how he did it, and you know the techniques, but you really need to build, and you need to practice, and you need to perfect that yourself. I had somebody reach out to me saying, like, oh yeah, like, if I come for a 1 week course with you, am I gonna be able to set like you after? Literally verbatim what they asked. I'm like, no, probably not. So I totally get what you're saying. It's you can show how it's done, but it's that practice. It's getting the reps in. It's doing it over and over and over.
People always ask me, they say, aren't you afraid that you're basically training your competition? And I say, no, because I know how hard it is. And if somebody puts in the time and effort to do something at the level that I'm doing it, then they earned it and they deserve it. And not only that, but they're going to push me to get better because, so-and-so over here is doing fantastic work. It's like that forces me to evolve. And I want to be the best I can possibly be. I don't want to be a gatekeeper. Like, when you come to my classes, like, I don't have any secrets. There's nothing that I won't show you. I just know that it's all extremely difficult. And so if you go home and you put in all that time and energy into basically producing a result that's going to compete with me, you earned it. Like, you deserve it, because it's like, it's hard. It's hard as hell. Like, nobody walks out of here doing what I do. Some do, but they got to go home and basically They got to be obsessed like I was, and they have to put in all the time like I did. I always tell people, if you want to do what I do, okay, I will give you, like, here's what you need to do. Like, here's the amount of time that you need to put in to do what I do. And if I showed that to people, they'd look at that and they'd be like, there's no way. Like, I can't pay that. The price tag is too high. I can't afford that. I was like, then what do you want?
Yeah.
It's like, there's no escaping. You have to go and do.
Yeah.
So, it's unfortunate. You don't want to like talk people out of it, or like, but
you got to be realistic though,
especially
too.
in my beginners class. Yeah, and when I have a beginner's class, I tell everybody, it's like, okay, I didn't tell you this when you signed up for class, but just FYI, engraving is hard. And you should probably know that before you start, but if you didn't, like, you'll find out, And so I know I have one student that's coming, and I'm a little bit worried because they wanted to sign up for an advanced class shortly after the beginner's class, and I told them, I was like, I don't think that's going to happen. We'll see, but it's like you have to like go home and, basically try to replicate.
Practice.
Yeah, apply for a long time probably.
Mm-hmm.
So to be determined.
I'd love to hear your thoughts on sort of intellectual property rights in engraving. Says obviously, like, you're engraving Super Mario characters, and then there's a lot of other, well, not a lot, but there are people, especially more in the engraving side of this industry, that have copied as well. Like, where do you stand on that, on both sides of that?
I grew up listening to punk rock, and so the whole ideology behind punk rock is fuck the establishment. And I'm gonna do what I want to do because that's punk rock. And I feel like a true artist, I have great quotes about this somewhere, but basically you can't have all these restrictions if you want to be a free artist. Now, with that said, intellectual property is real. Lawsuits are real. Companies and they can come after you if you replicate their images. It does belong to them, supposedly. What I do is risky, and there's danger involved in doing it because there could be consequences to my actions. Now, with that said, does it stop me from doing what I want to do? No. Why? I grew up just being kind of punk rock, and I just don't care. And is that a good attitude to have? I don't know. I don't tell people to do what I do. I say you need to do what you need to do. Learn the laws. I mean, I'm not advocating that people break laws. Am I breaking laws? I don't even know. I've had conversations about this with a lot of people.
Yeah.
And I feel like I am not doing anything wrong. I'm not selling replicated products. I'm not creating Mickey Mouse t-shirts and selling them online.
Yeah.
It's like the tattoo artist. Can the tattoo artist tattoo Mickey Mouse on somebody, or is that, copyright infringement? It's a lot of gray area. You could basically argue both sides.
Yeah.
With that said, it's like one of those things. It's like I like the aspect of being an artist where there's danger. If you're not sticking one foot into chaos, you're not growing and you're not living. You know what I'm saying? If I have to abide by all the rules. They're written right here, and we have to, it's like, okay, like I understand that. It's a personality type, I think. My personality type is high in openness and neuroticism. So I'm prone to negative emotion. That's why I don't deal with people. It's because I get a reflection of like, that person said they liked my hat, but I think that they're just making fun of me. It's like I suffer from that, which allows me to, be isolated and to create and to do what I do well because I don't need people. But two, I'm high in openness. different scenarios interest me, where I'm not like conscientious, where like you are, like you fit into a box. You're like really good at like,
Yeah.
I don't know if that makes sense.
No, it makes
But
total
basically,
sense.
yeah, I just kind of live in an arena where you're not telling me the rules. It's like,
I like that.
I grew up in the 80s. I grew up going to Disneyland. I've probably been to Disneyland almost every year of my whole life. Like that imagery and that nostalgia that I have for Disney stuff, especially old Disney. Disney's kind of gone off the rails. But it's like, that stuff is like imprinted into my brain as it's powerful, just as powerful as symbols are. Right. To me, it's like, I can't do that. But I want to because I have all these ideas, and it's like right up my alley of like me being really hyper creative with certain things because I already love that imagery. It's like Super Mario Brothers. I grew up. My first system was an NES. The Mario games were like magical. It introduced me to the world of magic. It's like, are you kidding me? Like the world has magic in it. And it's like, and now being like 46 years old, someone asked me to do that. It's like, that like sparks so much nostalgia and interest and fire in me to delve back into my magical childhood. And you're saying I can't do that? Well, I'm not going to listen to you because the temptation is too great to go into that. It's like, awesome. And if there's consequences, so be it. I've never run into any problems with anybody, or Rolex has never confronted me. Disney's never. And could they? Yeah, they could. What would happen if they did? They'd smash me. Who am I? I would get smashed. But Bernard, it's like,
there's bigger fish to fry.
Nobody's getting out of this life. We're all getting smashed. We're all gonna die. It's like we're not getting out of the world is dangerous. And there's a quote that I really like. The treasure you seek is in the cave you least want to enter. And so if you're afraid of a cave, you don't want to go in that cave because it could be dangerous, then you'll never get the reward that you truly desire. And so you're fucked. You know what I'm saying? And I could be wrong, but I just have like this mentality that, man, there's certain things that I really want to do, and I just can't be told not to do them. But I don't go tell everybody else to do them. No, like live your own life. If you feel that that's not ethical or appropriate or is wrong, then don't do it.
Yeah.
But, I grew up like my mom said, don't put your hand on the stove. So the first thing that I would do is put my hand on the stove. It's like just kind of like the person that I am. It's like, don't do that. It's like, well, why? It's not, I don't learn from other people's mistakes. I have to make those mistakes myself.
Yeah, no, I get it, man. Totally.
So
makes a ton of sense.
Yeah, it's one of those things. And I think that it's an old school mentality, I think, to a degree. And I think that most companies, especially if you're not replicating things for profit, like none of my pieces are for sale. Like they're, you know what I'm saying? They're not even, you can't find them. You can't go buy them. They're one-offs, so basically I'm not replicating anything. So I think that I'm in the right to do what I want to do. Maybe I'm wrong, but it's not going to stop me, And yeah. I see these every once in a while. My name comes up in threads on those stupid forums, which I don't participate in because I think they're ridiculous. And I'll read the comments, like people saying this and that, and it's like, you're all a bunch of pussies. You know what I'm saying? It's like you can't go out into the world and take what you want because you're scared. It's this mentality that I think is a little bit ridiculous. But to each their own. Yeah, I get it. Sure. There's people like out there that's like, if you didn't take that picture, it's like, say if you engraved an animal, but you didn't go out and take the picture of the animal and that picture doesn't belong to you, then you have no right to engrave it. It's not yours. It's like, you can go down the rabbit hole with that. It's like, it's never ending. It's like as
For
an
sure.
artist, like you can't really be told not to do things. And to be honest, I think the intellectual property and that kind of stuff is brand new. It didn't always exist.
No.
Well, I could be wrong about that, but you know what I'm saying? It's like saying like you couldn't engrave the cross because the Catholic Church on the maybe that's true. I don't even know, but I doubt it. You know, it's like these things are developed recently to protect, you know, corporations that you don't have anything in common with. It's like, and
You're not
to
taking
believe
money
their
out of their pocket.
ideologies is, yeah, you're just making yourself poor. You know, well, you're a slave. If you want to be a slave, you be a slave. I don't want to be a slave.
I hear you. So tell me, what is something you wish somebody had told you when you were just starting off that would have made the process of sort of, I guess, attaining that self-sufficient self-employment a little easier?
I don't know if there was a different road that I could have taken than the road that I did take. It's hard to say, like, woulda, coulda, shoulda.
Is there something that might have made it easier for you?
No, I think that I had to do things the way that they were done. It's one of those things, it's just, people did tell me. People did give me that advice. But being the person that I am, I probably didn't listen.
Yourself.
I wasn't ready to hear. Yeah. And so I think that, you know, it's one of those things where I was, you know, not that I believe in like predestination or, you know, the theory that basically everything is already mapped out. It's like you don't really have any choice. But I think that's true to a degree, meaning I had to walk the road that I walked, and I don't think that there was another road. I don't know if that makes any sense. And I'm just talking about me. I'm not talking about other people. I can't speak for other people, but I know that I feel like I'm destined for my own greatness. But even though I feel like that's going to happen, and I'm not talking about like famous or riches, I feel like I'm so successful because I do what I love, and I have a beautiful wife and two beautiful boys, meaning I already won the lottery. Like I have everything. Like, how did that happen? And I think that things are going to be even better or greater or for better or worse, but you know what I'm saying? But I still have to walk the walk. I still have to come into work every day. I still have to bust my ass. I feel, you know, I don't know if that makes any sense, but it's like,
It makes total sense, yeah.
if someone could have given me, I think people did give me advice, but some I may listen to, some maybe not so much. I just know that we're all on our hero's journey, and only we know how to win our game. Like the information is inside of us, and basically that doesn't set aside the fact that you still have to walk the path. You still have to climb the mountain. Even though I already know that I'm going to be on the top of that mountain, you still have to like make the ascent. It doesn't change the fact that you have to work.
I hear you.
I don't know. That's a tricky question.
It's all good, man.
I just feel like, yeah, it's hard to answer because I don't know if someone would have given me good advice. Now people have given me good advice in the past, and I think it's taken me sometimes years to listen to them. You know, it's like I didn't listen to you then, but that question or their advice circled for years, and then eventually you're like, oh, I get it.
Yeah. So just a couple more here. You don't seem to have a website, and I don't see any booking software, and you've got a great reputation and pretty significant following. How do you keep up with all the admin that goes along with all that?
I don't have any admin, meaning I
How
don't
do you do bookings
use much.
And stuff?
Everything's Instagram, and
everything's Instagram.
It's manageable because I don't use several platforms. You know, I don't advertise really anything on. You know what's funny? I don't know if we're friends on Facebook. I have 2 Facebook accounts. So March of 2020, my old Instagram got hacked into and it got deleted. I had a decent following. At least I thought, it was pretty good for about, I think I had like 85,000 followers or something like that,
Yeah,
which,
that
you
sounds
kind of
right.
like get puffed up in pride. It's like, look at me, everybody,
For sure.
But so that got, hacked into. Like when I first signed up for Instagram, I didn't know what it was. I was dating a girl that made my account. She's the one that, she put in my username as j.park, which turned out to be like my business name, my LLC. But she said, you should post stuff on Instagram. People would think it's cool. Okay, I don't even know what I'm doing. So she made my account. So this was before like dual authentication and all of that. And so I never basically, and as my account grew, I just never put any like second thought into it. Like it's there. It's always been secure. I can't imagine that I'd have a problem with it because I've never had a problem with it until I had a problem with it. And then it got taken away. It got hacked into. The people, I think they're from Moldova or some Eastern Bloc European country. I can't remember exactly where. And they ransomed it. They wanted like $300 or something, which, no, I'm not going to pay 300. You're not going to get my account back. You're ransoming it.
You give 300, they want 300 more. And
But
just keeps going.
This is my advice that I have to people nowadays, especially with social media. This is a painful lesson that I learned is one, your social media doesn't belong to you. It's not yours. You don't own it. It can be taken at any time. And so I had to go through a painful death where everything that I did, all of my business, my reputation, everything was kind of wrapped up in Instagram. And immediately that was taken away. And I'm telling you, it felt like the death of a family member, like 2 weeks. I tried to get it back.
I believe that.
I couldn't. But ultimately what happened is I realized that that wasn't important. Like I had put way too many eggs in that basket and it was not even important. Meaning I realized that the only thing that are important to me is my wife and my kids and, my reputation. And what's funny is like, I thought my business would drop off after that happened. It didn't even get touched. Like my reputation and the word of mouth and all of my clients, they immediately found me after 2 seconds. It's not like I was lost. All of that never missed a beat. And during COVID and all of that, like I was as busy as I've ever been. And I just realized from that moment on, it's like, it's my work that is really going to precede me. It's not my Instagram account or how many followers I have or Facebook. It's the work that I produce. And so I made like a concerted effort to like rise from the ashes of that. And if you were to look at my work before that happened to my work now, it evolved, it changed. Like, because I was complacent, I think before, where I was like, oh, I have a lot of followers, look at me, and I realized that wasn't good. I think that the dangers with social media, this is what I tell people. You should listen too. But social media is digital blow, where it's easy to get high. It's the internet is a drug. You know what I'm saying? And if we let it, we can start like getting high on our own digital blow, which is good in one way. I mean, but you have to at least be aware of it. Be aware that if you go viral, your videos go viral, stuff starts going like off the charts, it's digital blow. And if you can't so you get it, right? Because you've experienced it. And I'm not saying it's bad. I'm not saying don't do it. I'm not saying you don't want views. You want all that stuff, but you have to just realize that if you're getting high on it, beware. Because there could come a time where you're not getting high anymore and you're going to go into withdrawal. And that's the dangerous place. So I learned that I was unbeknownst to me, get high off this digital blow, and I had to go into withdrawal, and I had to get off it. And that was really difficult. And now I'm like leery of the dangers of wanting to grow and wanting to be, you know what I'm saying? Because it's like, what does that mean anyways? To grow for me at this point, it's just monetarily. I want to like make more money and do that. And a lot of times I feel like, yes, social media does that, but you can also get sidetracked. You know, you can start like focusing too much over here on creating content, but ultimately your real value lies in what you produce, you know? And so that never got taken away from me. I was always able to produce, and I felt like it was a good time for me to evolve and to get better at what I did, because I had to start back from zero. But the funny thing that I was going to say before is my Instagram was connected to my Facebook, and so my Facebook, I don't have it didn't get deleted, but I don't have access to it. So, and it's funny because if I post something on my current Instagram, it gets posted to my old Facebook account, which is still up, but I can't respond or I don't have access to it.
Oh, really?
So I probably get all kinds of people who message me on Facebook, but I can't respond to their messages, and they probably just think I'm a dick or something like that. And I always forget about it, but so stuff gets, and I don't know why it gets posted to my old Facebook from my new Instagram. But anyways,
Who knows how these platforms work, man?
Kind of an odd thing.
No, it's
yeah,
awesome.
But I've told people that have blown up over the last couple of years and whatnot. It's like, enjoy it. It's great. I'm not saying don't, but just be leery that these things, like, they're scary because
100%.
It's not really, you don't own it. You don't have control over it. It can be like, to the realization that it was wife, kids, and my work that I do, and my reputation, right? Because that's all you really have. And I think it's through, just like you said before, it's my reputation is what I do that allows me to be successful. Although I don't use, Instagram is the only platform that I use. I should be better about that, but honestly, I don't like technology. And it allows me to have a thriving business just by itself. And so with the admin, it's like, I suck at it. Like, I really do. I get like, just responding to people and messaging people, it can be overwhelming at times. And I try to keep up with it the best I can. And it's just me, And so in one regard, it's like, I feel like if I wanted to, I could probably grow, a lot. But it's like, is that what I want?
Yeah, and that's the flip side of that. You have to be
careful. You have to be careful what because it's like, you can have what you want, but there's a price to be paid for having what you want. My social media account getting deleted happened to be one of the best things that happened to me. It taught me a valuable lesson.
And that's what I was going to ask specifically, is what sort of lessons have you got from it? And that's a really great answer. And it's really like, it's nice to hear that, because I can definitely like speak from experience with the digital flow aspect of it, man. Like the way that they have got this system created, and you see that stuff popping off and you're just like, what? And then, but you got to come back to reality too, because it's not real. It's just, pictures on the internet at the end of the day. And you start realizing like how powerful it is, but also, how vulnerable as well, if it gets taken away, if you invest too much. So no, I appreciate your thoughts on that for sure. All right, Jeff. Well, I'm going to wrap it up there, man. I want to thank you so much for coming on. It's been a real pleasure chatting.
I appreciate it. Thanks for the invitation. Like, I admire you. I admire your work. It's always like a feather in my cap when people ask me to do stuff like this. So thank you.
No, appreciate it, man. All right. Well, we'll chat soon, man. Cheers.
Cool.
So, all right. So that was an incredible episode with Jeff, and I really can't thank him enough for coming on the podcast. Really, really, really fascinating guy. I think I think if he's open to it, I'll look to do a second one with him at a later date, because I think we could have kept talking for quite a long time. But thank you guys so much for watching. And if you haven't yet already, please subscribe down below. We got more episodes coming soon. I got some really great ones in the pipeline. And as I mentioned at the beginning, I run an online diamond setting school. So if you're interested in learning a little bit more about micro diamond setting, I've got a full online platform there dedicated to the tools, the setup, the basics, start to finish. It's a great place to start, and it's a great reference to look back to ongoing throughout your work in the industry. So until the next one, thanks guys for watching, and we'll check you next time.